Hello and welcome to grammar class. Today's topic is when to use the passive voice. That is, the uses of passive voice in English. Well, as you know, if the subject of a sentence is the doer or performer of an action, the verb of such a sentence is said to be in active voice. In other words, the active voice of a verb indicates that the subject is doing something. While on the other hand, if the subject of a sentence is the receiver of an action, if something is done to it, the verb in such a sentence is said to be in passive voice. For example, in the sentence, the hunter killed a lion, the subject hunter is doing the act of killing. Hence, the verb killed is said to be in active voice. However, in the second sentence, a lion was killed by the hunter. The subject, a lion, is receiving the impact of the act of killing. In this sentence, the subject, a lion, is the receiver of the action killing. Hence, the verb was killed is in passive voice. So we see that both these examples convey the same message, a hunter's act of killing a lion. But in active voice, the doer or performer of the action, that is the hunter, is more important, so it's the subject of the sentence. But in passive voice, a lion, that is the receiver of the action or the object of the verb, gets more importance, so it becomes the subject of the sentence. So the difference is clear. If the speaker wants to give more importance to the doer or agent of the action, the active voice is used. On the other hand, if the speaker wants to highlight or give more prominence to the receiver or object of the verb, the passive voice is used. But remember, in passive voice, when the object becomes the subject of the sentence, the doer or agent of the action is mentioned in the prepositional by phrase at the end of the sentence. You see, in English, most sentences are in active voice, but there are certain cases when the passive voice is preferable. Now I am going to tell you in detail when to use the active voice and when to use the passive voice. As I said earlier, most English sentences have the active voice construction. You see, we use the active voice to show the responsibility, involvement, or the authority of the doer or performer of an action. In this way, we show the greater importance of the doer or performer of an action than its receiver in a sentence. In active voice, the doer or performer of the action is the subject of the sentence occurring at its beginning, so it draws the attention of the listener first. The active voice is also used when there is no receiver of the action or the direct object of the verb in the sentence. In the first example, the subject Christopher Columbus is the doer or performer of the verb discover. We want to highlight the subject's role or responsibility for the discovery of America here. So the sentence has an active construction. In the next example, my mother is the subject of the sentence. The subject is the maker of delicious cakes. It shows her involvement, so the sentence has an active construction. In the last example, birds are flying in the sky. There is no receiver of the action flying. There is no direct object of the verb flying. The subject birds is the doer of the act of flying. Hence, this sentence cannot have a passive construction. The active voice is also preferable because it takes fewer words than the passive voice. It's easier to understand and has a direct tone. For example, the active construction Robin likes ice cream has 3 words, while the passive construction ice cream is liked by Robin consists of 5 words. However, in spite of these advantages of the active voice, the passive voice is preferable in certain cases. As I said earlier, when the receiver of the action or the action itself is more important than the doer or agent of the action, the object of the verb becomes the subject of the sentence and the passive voice is used. For example, in the sentence, the man-eater was killed last night by the villagers, the subject of the sentence, the man-eater, is the receiver of the act of killing. Hence, the verb was killed is in passive voice. Obviously, in this sentence, the receiver of the action, the man-eater, is more important than the doer of the action, the villagers. The national anthem will be sung by us before the program. In this sentence also, the subject of the sentence, the national anthem, is the receiver of the action singing. And obviously, the national anthem is more important than the doer of the action or the singers. Hence, the sentence has a passive construction. The passive voice is also preferable when the doer or agent of the action is irrelevant, unimportant, or unknown or understood, because the action is more important than the doer. Now look at the examples of passive construction on your screen. The sentence "my pocket was picked" has a passive construction. Why? Because the doer or agent of the action is unknown here, and the act of picking my pocket itself is more important than the doer. In the next example, the doer of the action, the police, is implied, and the act of arresting the murderer is more important, so the sentence has a passive construction. In the following example, the subject of the sentence, a cultural program, is the receiver of the action, while the doer or organizer of the cultural program is irrelevant. It's not important to mention who organized the cultural program, so the sentence follows a passive construction. In the last sentence, a vaccination drive will be carried out soon. The speaker wants to give more importance to the action, a vaccination drive, than the performer, so the passive construction has been used. The passive voice is also used to avoid a direct or authoritative or commanding tone. For example, the passive construction, the electricity bill must be paid by the 10th of the month by the consumer, has a less authoritative or commanding tone than the active construction, the consumer must pay the electricity bill by the 10th of the month. Similarly, the other passive constructions here, the medicines should be taken regularly by the patient, a vaccination drive needs to be launched at once, let the prisoner be set free, sound more pleasant and less authoritative than their active constructions would have been. The passive voice is also preferable in formal invitations, requests, and announcements, etc. Why? Because the passive voice sounds more formal, polite, and civilized, and the agent of the action may seem irrelevant in these sentences. For example, the passive construction, "you are cordially invited to attend the dinner," sounds more civilized and formal. And in this sentence, the subject "you," the receiver of the action, gets due respect and importance as well. The next passive construction, visitors are requested not to smoke inside the exhibition hall, sounds less authoritative and more civilized. And then the next passive construction, the flight to London will be delayed by an hour due to foul weather, is an official announcement with a more formal and civilized tone. Another key use of the passive voice is to express a professional, impersonal, or neutral or objective tone in scientific or academic writings such as research reports, news reports, process description, and so on. Why? Because in such writings, the action is often more important than its doer or performer. Hence, it's not desirable to mention the doer or agent of the action in such cases. For example, a 3-phase trial was conducted before launching this vaccine is a passive construction expressing just the right objective tone for scientific writing. The passive construction, electricity is also produced from various renewable resources, also expresses an impersonal or objective tone suitable for such writings. Then in the service maintenance book of your vehicle, you may find the professional or academic language of passive construction. In the first service, the engine oil is changed, the engine is tuned, and the vehicle is thoroughly inspected for any possible trouble. As I said earlier, the passive voice is used when the receiver of the action is given more importance than its doer or performer, and the doer or the agent of the action is mentioned in the prepositional by phrase at the end of the sentence. However, in most passive constructions, the by phrase is omitted. This is so particularly when the agent or doer of the action is self-evident or unspecific. If the doer or agent of the action is an indefinite pronoun or noun such as one, someone, somebody, they, people, etc., it may be omitted in the by phrase of the passive construction. For example, in the active construction, one should follow the traffic rules. The subject is an indefinite pronoun one. However, in passive voice, the indefinite pronoun one need not be mentioned in the by phrase by one. The correct passive construction would be the traffic rules should be followed. Similarly, in the passive construction, my pocket was picked yesterday by someone, the use of the by phrase by someone is unnecessary. Here the doer of the action someone is unknown and the action is more important. My pocket was picked yesterday is just right. In the last example also, Mr. Mandela was loved and respected by the people. The use of the by phrase by the people is unnecessary. Why? Because Mr. Mandela was a people's leader, so the doer of the action is implied or self-evident here. If you just say Mr. Mandela was loved and respected, it's clear who loved and respected him. Last but not the least, in prepositional constructions, instead of the regular prepositional by phrase, prepositional phrases consisting of with, at, or of may be used due to idiomatic usage. Idiomatic usage means this is how they are used in English. People are fed up with frequent power cuts. In this passive construction, after fed up, the preposition with has been used instead of by. Similarly, in the passive construction, I was shocked at the news, the preposition at has been used instead of the by phrase after the past participle shocked. In the third example, the prepositional phrase at the unbelievable sight has been used after the past participle astonished and not the by phrase. The prepositional phrase of life has been used instead of the by phrase after the past participle tired. In the passive construction, she is tired of life. And in the last example, the prepositional phrase with fuel has been used instead of the by phrase after filled. These are some exceptional idiomatic uses where the by phrase is not used. That's the end of today's class. Hopefully you liked the video. Please be sure to like, comment, share and subscribe to our channel for more grammar videos. Thanks for watching.